Hello again. Today I'm going to discuss Chapter 4, The Civilization of the Greeks. Again, if you're wondering where I got these notes from, they are very, very similar to the readings that I have in all the different blocks within the site. The difference with these is that many of the pictures and other graphics that I put in here are still in this particular document. Greece is a very mountainous peninsula. It's about the size of the state of Louisiana. Plains and river valleys are surrounded by huge mountain ranges. The earliest civilizations, as far as been figured so far by archaeologists and historians, comes from Minoan Crete. It was named after Minos, a legendary king. There was an enormous palace complex, and this was the center of a huge sea empire that traded with mainland Greece and Egypt. And it's not really known why they collapsed. Were they invaded? Did they get hit by a tidal wave? It's not really known. The first Greek state was Mycenae. From those years, it was discovered by the amateur German archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann in 1870. There were Indo-Europeans who came out of this state that spread to Europe, India, and Persia. They were monarchies that fought and lived in palace complexes. They were a warrior people, and it's thought that the Iliad is really talking about this particular civilization that lived in Asia Minor, or Troy, in about 1250 before the Common Era. Homer is a very, very important poet who told the tale of Paris, the Prince of Troy, who kidnapped Helen, who he was in love with, who was the wife of a Spartan king, which outraged the Greeks. Agamemnon led an invasion of Troy, and he sacked the city in 1250 before the Common Era, after 10 years. In the Odyssey, Homer tells of Odysseus, a Greek hero from the battles at Troy, and his 20-year battle to return home. The Homeric legacy in Greece is very, very important. You can't overemphasize it. He gave Greece an idealized past like the Golden Age in ancient China. This Golden Age is used to educate males in the aristocratic values of courage and honor. And this comes to be known as classical philosophy. You're expected to do what is right and what is excellent at all times. This is how human beings can live best, or classical. The third syllabus question now. The polis is a community of citizens in which all political, economic, social, cultural, and religious activities were focused. It consisted of those with political rights only, usually adult males. Women and children do not have any political rights. And there are also slaves in ancient Greek society. The hoplite system developed along with the polis. It replaced individual duels. They're heavily armed infantrymen who advanced into battles in phalanxes, which is a rectangular formation with their shields held over them and their spears forward. It is like a tank, only it consists of individual soldiers. Aristocrats and farmers fought it out for power, and those who become hoplites and fight for the state could also challenge this aristocratic control. This is key. War is an integral way of Greek life. Plato described war as always existing by nature between every Greek city-state. And this, as a result, becomes a prominent part of Western civilization. Between 750 and 550, large numbers of Greeks settled in distant lands. Colonies saw themselves as independent polises linked by a common socio-economic and religious practices. The Greeks are polytheistic. women are to bear and raise children. However, they could engage in athletic competitions, which they did do periodically. The Olympics has their roots in ancient Greek society. Lycurgus was a famous lawgiver. He created the oligarchy in the Spartan state. 2 kings were responsible for the army on campaign, and they shared power with the Gerousia, a council of elders. Sparta is a totalitarian state. The government controls all aspects of life, and travel is not allowed. Occasionally, tyrants rose to power, not necessarily through wickedness, but because it's time for some change. Oligarchies develop out of this, and tyranny was largely ended by the 6th century. Sparta eventually conquered nearby Messina and Laconia, and they were turned into helots, or captured serfs, and forced to work for the Spartans. And they created a military state to ensure control over these different groups that they conquered. The new Sparta is usually associated with Lycurgus. They are highly self-disciplined individuals. Again, this totalitarian state takes babies away from their mothers at age 7. They go to live in army barracks where they are disciplined and trained, basically getting ready for war. At 20, they're members of the regular army, and finally by age 30, they are considered mature males and allowed to vote and live at home. Spartan women lived at home and had greater freedom of movement and power in the household than elsewhere in Greece. Why? Because the men are usually fighting and their children are being cared for by someone else. In the 6th century before Common Era, Sparta organized an alliance with almost all the Peloponnesus, and the Peloponnesian League at this time is dominated by Sparta. Solon was another lawgiver in Athens. Cleisthenes gained power after Pisistratus and his son's reigns ended. Eventually, the Assembly of Citizens, or the polis, comes into power in Athens, and they will form the first demos, or people, kratia power in world history. This is also a polytheistic city-state. And what affected the Persian Wars and the Peloponnesian Wars have on Greek civilization? The basic answer is it will come to destroy it. Persia and Greece will fight 3 main wars. One of them was on the plain of Marathon, where Phidippides runs back after 26.2 miles to warn the Athenians that Darius and his army are on the march. This is probably a historical myth, but since that time, the running of marathons are at that distance. Although they are outnumbered, hoplites under Miltiades attacked the Persians and defeated them at Marathon, which is a legendary victory for Western civilization because it proved that the Persians could be defeated. Thermopylae was another area of battle, and 300 Spartans defended the pass for 2 days until they were sold out by a trader who showed the Persians a way around them. This was a Persian victory. And the last big battle was a naval battle at Salamis, and they defeated the Persian navy despite being outnumbered. And that is a replica of a Greek sailing vessel. In the 5th century before Common Era is the golden age of Athens. This is the age of Pericles. He expanded democracy. He is re-elected 20-something times. And there are huge achievements in Greek culture under Pericles. The Delian treasury was rebuilt and controlled by the Athenians, which is going to lead to problems with Sparta. Many of you may be familiar with the Acropolis. It's still there in Greece today. And because of this problem with the Spartans, they will fight the Peloponnesian Wars, and this is what leads to their decline during 461 through 431 before Common Era. Pericles died of the plague. They fight for 27 years, and eventually, by 404, Athens is sacked and torn down. Herodotus is a famous historian. He's considered the first real historian. He's a master storyteller, and he wrote about the Persian Wars. Thucydides writes about the history of the Peloponnesian Wars. He is the first real historian in terms of what we would think of today. Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, other famous dramatists. Again, the Homeric values are still there. It's worth it to pursue what is good over evil. It is worth it to pursue what is virtuous or heroic or right. Aristophanes has problems with this. He was a satirist. Lysistrata was about the Peloponnesian Wars, and wives went on a sex strike to protest the endless war. As mentioned, the Greeks were polytheistic. The Parthenon is dedicated to Athena, the patron goddess of Athens. And the Romans will end up copying much of what the Greeks did. Philosophy is Greek for love of wisdom. Pythagoras, famous geometry mathematician. The theorem a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You have him to thank for that, ladies and gentlemen. The Sophists, who were rhetoricians, and they taught this persuasive oratory. Sophistry comes to be thought as dangerous, and Socrates was a wonderful arguer. His Socratic method, question and answer, and eventually people will come to see things through their own reasoning. All knowledge is within each person. The unexamined life is not worth living. Plato, another famous philosopher, the Republic. Philosopher kings are the best type of government, but aristocracy is better because what happens when the philosopher king, like Pericles, dies? Usually it's someone of lesser ability. His student was Aristotle. In the politics, he identified all organization of governments, and he came to see them all as being of three forms. And of those three forms, there are good and bad forms of them. He is a major influence on Western thought. Hellenistic world comes from Alexander. He spread the Greek culture to all of that purple area. And that's why we know of it still to this day. He did all of this by age 32, when he died of possibly alcoholism. All of those four areas were under control of Alexander. Hellenistic means to imitate the Greeks in all of those different areas. Alexander will use Persians as administrators, but later monarchs use Greco-Macedonians. Don't call a Macedonian a Greek. Alexandria in Egypt is the largest Hellenistic city by 100 before Common Era. As mentioned, these cities helped to spread the culture of ancient Greece. These are trading and seafaring peoples. Upper class women had opportunities in these cultures. At one point, Alexander's library contained 500,000 scrolls and attracted scholars from all over the known world. In art and in sculpture, depicting the human form in its most classical or realistic form is the ideal. Here are some other scientists. Aristarchus developed heliocentric or sun-centered theory way before it comes to be thought of with Copernicus and Galileo. Euclid, his geometry book, is used into modern times, and Archimedes was probably the most famous scientist of the Hellenistic era. The screw. He thwarted many Romans by some kind of compound pulley system or catapult system. The Epicureans believed that happiness was the goal of life, and Epicurean delight. Pleasure. It's not the hedonism of today, but pleasure from putting the mind at rest. In other words, reject politics and public affairs. Stoicism will become a very famous philosophy of the Romans. Do not be disturbed by life's problems. Bear whatever happens. And that is about it for chapter 4.